episode, we are still here. So thankful that Dominic Zimmerman was able to join us. Looking forward to our second episode coming up. But we thought we'd take some time and just rehash. It's just too good to not go back and look over The Last Dance. What an amazing documentary. I know all the listeners of the podcast have been following along with that. We've had lots of people chiming in and talking to us about it. And we thought we would just talk a little bit about episodes 3 and 4. A few things from those episodes stood out to me. Corbs, you just chime in whenever you feel like you want to talk. But obviously they made an attempt and a serious effort to focus those episodes around three things: Dennis Rodman, Phil Jackson, and Scottie Pippen's growth as a player. I thought it was pretty cool to watch the growth in Pippen. And, you know, for me, being someone where those moments come back, and when I'm watching that, it brings me right back to just being not a teenager, but, you know, being a young man and watching the suits, and they're wearing those bad Oakley glasses, and the suits are just so big, and Jordan's jeans are huge, and he's tucked in. And so there's so many cool things that bring me back to that. But I think watching Scottie Pippen grow as a basketball player was pretty cool. I remember when I was a kid, I had an Avia poster that I won at SFU basketball camp, and he was sponsored by Avia. That was his first shoe, if I'm correct, I think, doing a reverse dunk. For him to go through what he did, and you can kind of tell Michael's a little bit salty about the migraine game, and you can tell that he's looking past it, but I think he also does a good job of giving Scottie credit, especially in the first two episodes where he said, you know, his name needs to be mentioned just like mine anytime there's a championship brought up with the Chicago Bulls. So just seeing that growth and development, and then John Sally just saying, like, once Scottie figured it out, it was over. Like, we didn't have a chance. So that was a huge takeaway. I don't know. Did you follow that? Did you know much about Pippen's career? What to you was kind of eye opening there, Corpse?
I guess that I didn't really get a chance to understand Pippen's career. We just kind of knew him as Jordan's sidekick, right? Jordan's Robin to his Batman, and it was really fascinating. Like, I didn't know he had that huge growth spurt from college before going to the NBA. It was essentially like a 6 foot point guard growing into a 6'7" body, right? So
Yeah. And then you see all these tweets and these emotional feels about people like Scottie Pippen played NAIA and da da da. It's like Scottie Pippen went from a nobody to an absolute freak, like, overnight. So, you know, there's a little bit more to that. We can't all be Scottie Pippen with his body and length and size, or you know what I mean?
exactly right. I also didn't even know, especially when Phil came, and how much he handled the ball. I think there's a lot being said about his two-way play, how fantastic he was as a defender and scorer. But for me personally, I didn't realize how much Scotty handled the ball.
Yeah, I think not many people. I mean, in the triangle, that was the biggest thing, was to keep the ball moving and to work out of that, right? So that was also a very cool time as well as watching the transition. And that we'll talk about Phil a little bit. I mean, what can you say about him? But to be able to get a guy like Michael Jordan at his level to buy into that system and have him believe that, all right, I don't need to score 38. I don't need the ball in my hands. And you know, MJ, you know, adamantly in the documentary wasn't a believer at first. He was open to say that. But for Phil to be able to convince a personality like that to buy in and then to see it take off, I think that just speaks volumes to Phil Jackson as a coach. Just phenomenal in the way he's able to handle people. And in my growth as a coach personally, one of the things that I learned early on from my playing days was not to treat every person the same. The coaches that I didn't appreciate the most were the ones who treated us the same. The coaches that I liked the best were the ones who were able to connect on a different level. And I think when you look at Phil Jackson from a professional level, what he's been through, his resume, I mean, the guy could have an ego as wide as his shoulders and as long as his arms, because those are both
Right.
long.
Yeah.
But the championships, you know, the pedigree, the resume, being brought in, he was pretty much picked to be there and then move into that job. But he still made it about the players. He made it about the athletes, even at that level. It was pretty phenomenal to see. And then the whole part about just letting Rodman just go for 48 hours and let him have a little vacation, knowing that those 48 hours that turned into more would pay off for his team in the long run. And it's just who Dennis was and what he needed. And I can only imagine what he did with other guys, right? They show the clip when they're over in Europe and he's got them doing yoga, right? They're all on mats on the floor doing yoga and stretches and he's leading it. It's like, wow, like what professional coach, any sport right now would even attempt to do that? I'm not saying that it would work right now. I just mean at that time and the way the Bulls were, how do we not, give Phil so much credit in terms of just having everybody buy into what they were trying to do? Just crazy stuff. I've read all of his books. Sacred Hoops is a phenomenal book for anybody out there that is trying to track that down. The Rings one as well, and then he's got another book about the Lakers. His time with the Lakers. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a great book as well. And he's just such a powerful mind, and just able to stay true to himself, but also understanding the needs of each of his players. I thought that was phenomenal. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking up the book. Is it Phil Jackson, The Last Season?
The last season, yeah.
Right, okay. I mean, you kind of said everything, right?
You're an aspiring coach. You get a little hot headed at times. You get on officials. We've talked about that a little bit. You get a little emotional with your kids, just like I did when I was younger, and that's fine. But like when you see a guy like Phil Jackson, like what's your perspective? I'm 42, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm still trying to grow and learn, but just a little bit more life experience than you. I'm interested to know like what are the younger people thinking when they see Phil? Are they even taking it away? Do they get it? Or do they just think it's Scotty and Michael and that? Or what are your takeaways?
I see someone who's just able to connect with his entire team and just knowing that, like what you said, you can't treat Mike the same way you treat Jed Butchler. Butchler? What's that his name?
Judd
Damn it.
Bush. If you're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, that's
if
my
you're
bad.
gonna get the white guys, get them right, okay?
I know I could have went Steve Kerr, I could have went like Bill Wennington, but I chose the guy with like the super European last name, of
Did you know
course.
Bill Wennington's Canadian?
Oh yeah, Bill Wennington, yeah, he's from Montreal, right?
Attaboy.
I had to do my research, right? I had to do my homework. But I look at that, and he wasn't even that hot headed as a coach, right? And just knowing that as a young coach, that you can't lose your cool, and the players. I know he's coaching professionals, but even then, like they can pick up on that. They can feel, a coach's anxiety. They can feel when a coach is starting to lose it, starting to lose grip of what is actually going on, and it's probably no different for kids, right? Or probably even more attuned to what their coach is doing.
Absolutely. When you think about the young people that we're coaching, there's no $60,000 just for showing up for the day, right? So how do we get them to buy in?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think it was super bold of him. And I know a lot of the young listeners out there just kind of think of Phil as this really washed up basketball president for the Knicks and did some really, really, really poor moves. But his time as the Bulls coach, he was, would you say, revolutionary? I don't know about that, but just his ability to manage such a diverse group of personalities, right? Mike is so different than anyone that we've seen at his time, and I think it's not hard to say that Rodman's probably the most interesting person on the face of this earth. Probably he's up there. He's in the top 5, I think. And just knowing that, okay, yeah, like what you said, knowing that Rodman needs to go away and go on a little bit of a bender, I guess, to get his mind sorted out and then come back and be professional is,
Yes. Oh, that was a Bender, all right.
oh boy.
Jonathan Bender. Yeah, I think if you're looking at, you use the word revolutionary, and I don't know if revolutionary is the right term, but without Phil Jackson, there's probably no Pop, and there's no one like D'Antoni. Not to say that he's an all-time great. I'm just saying, everybody's learning from someone, and that's another thing with this podcast and what we're trying to create. We're not trying to compare ourselves to the Bulls and Phil Jackson, but sharing people's stories and letting people be transparent and allowing people to see who you are and being truthful and honest and being open allows people to you bring people in and people are drawn to you and then they're able to learn from you. And a huge fault of mine as a young coach was I thought I had to keep everything in my pockets and I didn't want to share. And then I just realized like the more that I share, the better I felt and the more connections I had and the more they shared with me. And you know what I mean? At the end of the day, when you compete, we both have to beat each other. So I'm holding this film or something in, someone else is getting it from somewhere else, right? And I
Right.
think Phil Jackson's approach was great. And to be able to take one of the most dominant mental, sports personalities ever, to have him buy in is huge. And then to look where it went is amazing. Roll that into the treatment of Rodman. I mean, what talk about Dennis Rodman? What a guy! He obviously has everything, all his side stories and just the chaos behind him and everything. But I was listening to Jalen and Jacoby again, and they were talking about his dad has like 24 children or something like that. Never
It's
really met his
wild.
dad until a few years ago. Like, there's a reason we're all who we are for a reason, right? We're built the way we are for a reason. And Dennis Rodman was who he was. And Chuck Daly obviously got the most out of him as a young man. And then as Dennis got comfortable and he got into more of a celebrity role, the Madonna thing and all that, he kind of knew, okay, I can push some boundaries here. He was like that kid in class that wants to push and push and push, maybe for attention, maybe just because that's who they are a little bit. But Phil was able to get the most out of him. And it was very intriguing and good and interesting to see because even as a fan, just watching those games and, being a basketball hoop head and watching Rodman and not realizing what's happening behind the scenes and forgetting that Pippen was out for a good portion of that one season. And then when Pippen came back, Rodman kind of, got all sensitive. And so just so many different things that you don't even realize. And then you throw in the pro level. It's such a cool documentary and just so needed right now. I think everyone's just so hungry for it and just enjoying every minute, regardless of who your GOAT is, how many J's you own, what team you liked, how old you are. We can all learn from this documentary. Plus, what a way to go back into some amazing times in sports.
Definitely, Jacoby would say that Robin was the most habitual of line steppers.
Well, Jacoby better be ready for when we take over his podcast. So, you know what I'm saying?
I got you. I got you.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this. There's no better visual of, and I'm not promoting it, but Dennis Rodman walking down the tunnel with a bandana wrapped around his head, a Miller Lite in his hand, walks into the parking lot. Two or three of his biker buddies, who clearly have VIP access to the game waiting for him, chugs his beer, fires up his bike, no helmet, probably because it's America and you don't need helmets, and just peels off as the crowd screams after him. I'm like, wow.
He is wild. I gotta say.
But how cool when he's talking to and he's talking about reading his teammates and knowing where the ball's going to go. And yeah, they edit it to make it look a little goofy, but he's studied MJ's positions and when he shoots and whoever else. Like, unreal, man. The detail behind all that is so phenomenal. So phenomenal. It's so important for so many people to think because I think we all sit there and we've had that argument like, oh yeah, how many threes could you hit? Or if you played this NBA player one on one, or if you did this, and then it's like you see that, and it's like even Dennis Rodman is all over a film study. He's sitting in a locker by himself watching tape. He is studying every guy he's going up against, and then just think about how strong that man is. Oh, forget about it.
Isn't it one of the anecdotes that he would go on like the treadmill for like hours after games and stuff?
Yeah, just a freak, man.
Yeah.
And then you see him in college, and he could score 25. He just realized this is who I am. This is my craft, right? Like Dom, our last guest, realized this is who I need to be. This is what's going to give me the best career. This is how I'm going to make our team the best. And I'm going to sacrifice. I'm not worried about the stat line at the end of the day. I'm not worried about having 25, right? That's what a lot of people get caught up in is the points is how do we make our team successful and look at what he made of his career just by doing that. Amazing stuff.
Yep. That's the definition of buying into a role, right?
Mhm. I said I was going to stop. I just can't. Like, there's so many things. And then we could talk about the Pistons and all of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
Oh, all this stuff.
we got to keep it short. But at least, you know what? Like, at least, and I know you guys give me a hard time. You go, oh, you're a grumpy old man and da da da. But like, look at the rivalry. And it's not the NBA's fault. It's not anyone's fault. I don't think it's because of player movement. There just haven't been couple teams that have stuck around long enough for it to happen. But like, just look at that rivalry, and it was literally you had to pass a team to get to the next level. It wasn't just so and so's not in it. This, you know what I mean? And just so
Yeah,
cool,
I get it.
so cool, great stuff. And man, someone tweeted out it was like a 3-minute clip of Jordan highlights against the Pistons, and I like replied and I said, I mean, if I was Lane Beer, I probably just fouled him every time too, because he's in 90% of the clips, either getting dunked on or getting a reverse layup. I would have just started
Yep.
the guy too, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So I I don't think it's leaving more room for people to compare, because I don't think that's the purpose of this. I think it just gives people that didn't get the opportunity a clear perspective of what everyone's seeing in Michael Jordan and those Bulls teams and just how great they were. That's it, man. Let's move on to our special guest. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, Good Lad Clothing. Good Lad Clothing is located at 221 Esplanade in Lower Lonsdale in North Vancouver, 30 seconds from the C bus. Good Lad Clothing prides itself in being the only 3-in-1 shop in Vancouver where you can get clothing, coffee or a beer, and a cut. Everything is ethically sourced, and what better time to support Canadian-made goods than right now during COVID-19. From the locally roasted beans to Toronto's own Crown Shaving, which is one of my favorites, to also one of my favorites, a Vancouver company named Reigning Champ. So many great options there at Good Lad. The owner, Shane Meyer, will offer you a private shopping experience and will also give you a free beer or coffee while you tour the store and check out what you need. While you're there, if you do happen to mention a Hoops Journey podcast or that you know me, Aaron Mitchell, we'll also offer you a 25% off discount anything store-wide. If you are unable to make it to the store, please go online to goodladclothing.com or shopthefoldgroup.com to have clothes delivered right to your doorstep with free shipping worldwide. Thank you so much to our sponsors, and let's get back to our show. Hey, yo, we are still alive. Welcome back to A Hoops Journey. We are hanging on here. They haven't deleted us from Spotify or Apple iTunes, whatever you call it. And we are thrilled to bring in another guest for episode 2. This gentleman has become someone who early on was a bit of a coaching rival and has become a good friend. And I think he has a really cool story to share, and where he's at in his life with basketball is very unique. And I think he is going to bring a really cool perspective. So we're excited to welcome Val Dhillon, head coach of the Burn Creek Boys Bulldogs men's basketball team. Val has been there for a significant period of time. Val played at Douglas for a couple of years after playing high school at David Thompson, and started out with the junior team and has kind of kept going with a program that was pretty established and taken it to another level, reaching the final at the AAA level and many Final Fours as well. So, Val, welcome to the show, and we're happy to have you here, my man.
What's going on, guys? Thank you for having me. It's a huge honor to be here. And I love what you guys are doing. So, thank you.
Yeah, I skipped a little bit of your resume, but we'll get into that. And I kind of more want to just get into who you are and what you're about, because, we've known each other for a good amount of time, and we've, started to know each other even better and become good friends. And that's not the reason that you're on here. It's not friends list. It's people's stories that I think are really unique. And, we're going from someone who was our last guest who ended up playing professional basketball to someone who has, just grinded and put their head down and is now a passionate, dedicated high school coach. And, as everyone else as a guest, my first question is, what was it about basketball and sport in general that just got you going? And was it a choice in your house? What was the Dhillon house like? Were there options, or how did that work for you?
Well, what's interesting about it is my dad was born in India and came here. My mom was born here in Canada. Neither side of the family played sports, so it was not a priority in my house. My dad's side of the family was pretty academic. For me, I think I was maybe grade 3 or 4, and I saw Michael Jordan play and just fell in love with it. And so now with this documentary being out, it's bringing back all those emotions. And MJ's impact, it really had an impact on my love for the game when I was young. And then of course that love changes, but that was the initial entry point for me.
Interesting. Yeah, we did a little bit of a recap on episodes 3 and 4 to start here, and that's what I brought up too, was that I'm not necessarily in grade 3 and 4. I'm a little bit older than you. Careful now. But just brings you right back. It's like music, right? Like music can bring you back to a certain time in your life, whether it was happy or sad. but I think sport as well can bring you back to these moments where you realize like, wow, that was when it clicked in. And, that was for me was like the Magic Johnsons in my life. And like, I'll never forget crying, like Patrick Ewing lost in the national final and when he was at Georgetown. And so it's just cool to have that documentary back. The timing is so perfect. So glad that they bumped it back so we can all kind of reflect. And, like Corbin and I were talking about, is for the young people. And it's not to compare the GOAT conversation. It's just for people to really see like who MJ was, right? And what are you picking up or remembering? Or maybe is there something that you didn't even realize in that docu that you're seeing?
Well, the first thing is that what about the soundtrack on the documentary? I mean,
Absolutely.
some of that old school hip hop has taken me back, and you mentioned that song can do that to you.
Well, that was Corbs, right? Corbs, what was the song you? I said, what song are you bumping in our little purpose pod? You said,
I'm bad. L Cool J.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Corbs rode around Surrey for a whole day the next day, bumping "I'm Bad," thinking he was bad, right?
Yeah. Windows up or windows down, Corb?
Windows down,
There you
baby.
go. Even I don't roll around all the time with my windows down.
Because you're known in the community, man. You got to keep a
Yeah.
little.
Oh,
Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean back to the documentary, I think it just MJ was just on a different level. I think, for our generation especially, we were growing up watching it. I think you guys mentioned with Dom the impact Kobe had on his generation, and some of the older cats like me, we don't always realize what that impact is, but for me it was MJ, and then it was Iverson. And the other thing the documentary is bringing back to me is how much I love Scottie Pippen. And I remember this quote from Reggie Miller saying Scottie Pippen's the only player in the league who can score 6 points and dominate a game. And Pip was such a big part of the league, but a big part of that team and that run.
And I think the young hoopers can take away if you just stick to it and you have a good mindset and you believe in yourself and keep working. I mean, yeah, we can't all be like 6'8" with the wingspan, but Pippen had every reason, family wise, everything he went through to just not make it, and he did, right? And I think he put his head down, which is cool. So such a wicked documentary.
Yeah, also cool that he played at an NAIA school, which so cool to see that.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously you're an East Side guy, right? Yeah. Well, do
Yeah,
you
you
talk
live in
about
my
that,
hood now.
man?
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I appreciate about you, especially when I see you coaching, and we'll talk about that more. But you can tell that it's in you. But what was it like going to high school at David Thompson? Where did you fit in? What was your peer group? What did you do? Who were you in high school?
So David Thompson was interesting back then. Pretty diverse East Van school, kind of on the south side, and huge population from Punjab, and then a huge population from Hong Kong. And so I kind of had friends all over the place. And by the time I got to grade 12, I was a bit of a social nomad, I suppose, not really fitting in anywhere, but also kind of fitting in everywhere. And,
Yeah.
one of the few kids that loved basketball in a school that wasn't very good at basketball at the time. And they've had a couple runs in the last couple years, but when I was there, we weren't very good at all. And so that alone, kind of, you're walking your own path in a way. Yeah, I mean, the 90s was interesting in East Van too, particularly for our community. I mean, we were in the newspaper every couple weeks for one thing or another. And so growing up with that around you, and not really fitting into that, and I mentioned, having a dad who really only valued academics, but was the only parent at every game in a working class community. It was, you think about it now, it's an interesting place to grow up.
For sure, yeah. That's wow, super good insight. And then super unique community. Now, was Thompson? Was it 9 to 12?
It was 8 to 12.
8 to 12. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're there, and you got into coaching when you're in grade 11. So you're playing hoops for the high school team, and it says right away that you started coaching right there. What was the reason? Was it to build a resume? Were you looking for a job? Like, what was it?
You know what? It was the summer going into grade 11, and my dad made me volunteer at summer camp. I didn't want to do it because I just wanted to ball all the time. And so but I volunteered at Sunset and then at the YMCA. And then, kind of really liked working with kids. They were pretty fun. So just started coaching like a grade 7 team at Sunset, and then another one at the Y. and just never really looked back. The competitive side of an athlete, I really had a hard time admitting to myself how much I loved it because I wasn't done playing yet. But
Yeah.
but I really loved it, and I
Yeah.
loved it from an early age. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. So yeah, you look at your bio, and okay, so then you're like, you finish high school, you're on whatever kind of a crummy high school team or
Yeah.
whatever, middle of the pack.
Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't really lose anything. You guys weren't awful, and then
Yeah.
you decide to go and hoop at Douglas College. Is it because it was just still inside of you and you didn't want to let go? Was it because you were planning to go to school and you thought that would be something that just went together? Like what? How does that look for someone at your age at that point?
Yeah, I wasn't academic at all. Like the school side of it didn't really appeal to me. I think I
Did your
wanted to
dad
play
know that?
ball. No, yeah, he knows. He's well aware. That side came later, but yeah, it drove him crazy. But I just wanted to play, and so played in the Douglas College Summer League, and invited the coach to come and watch me play. And I think I had like a 40-point game, and it's a summer league, right? Like it's not a big deal. But
Mhm.
it turns out the guy who was guarding me had played pro overseas for a little bit and kind of had retired, was a little bit older. But I'll take a 40 piece against the guy who played pro. And so the coach said, "Well, you're on the squad." And
Right.
then didn't really get any burn, like no playing time for a long time, and then kind of came off the bench for a year. And yeah, it was good. It was a good experience.
Who
Um,
who was your coach then?
Jamie Wee.
Oh yeah, Jamie Lee. So that would
Yeah.
have been what year was that?
So I played in '04, '05 for Steve McGilligan, and then I played the year after that for Jamie.
Wow, he played for McGilligan. Rest in peace.
Yes. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
crazy. Jeez, you way younger than me, man.
Nobody
Oh,
would be able to tell if they saw us together, though.
oh boy. Or
I mean,
four
I
or
mean, I
five.
do color my beard a little better than you, but that's okay.
This podcast is sponsored by Just for Men.
Only when Dillon's on. That's right.
Now, was the year that the second year when Jamie was coaching, was that the year that they won the national championship?
No, no, it
No.
wasn't. No, they
Okay.
were, I think, 2 years away from that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So who was
yeah.
on that team?
So we had a bunch of guys from Toronto.
Yeah.
Andre Grant was on that team who ended up coaching at Cap for a bit. I don't know if you know him, but Junior Lennon
Yep.
was on there for a bit. He hung out in
Yep.
Vancouver for a while, and then I think went back to Toronto. Jeff Lenahan, who's still at Douglas working, I think.
STM
Uh,
grad.
yeah, great guy, great
Yeah.
guy.
Grad. Yep.
Yeah. Sean Velasco was the assistant coach.
Ron Badesco, man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my freshman year at Cap College. He
That's
was on the same team as me. Yeah.
that's right. He could still hoop back then when he was helping
Yeah.
coach us too, and so
Very, very good human being, that man.
very good human being. Dwayne,
STM grad as well, actually.
yeah. John Thompson was on that team. Cody Berg
Yeah.
was on that team.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Dwayne Selby was on that team. Yeah, it was good.
Wow, that's some players there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think no, I'm not going to talk about the current state of the Pac West, but there was a time when it was the BCCAA, and all we had was, what was it, UVic, SFU, and UBC, right?
That's
And
right.
it was literally a stepping stone, and it was like either you need a little work on your game or your academics aren't good enough, and then guys were moving on, right? And there's so many guys down those lists, and it's just like, that's why I just ask, because like when I hear that, I go, yeah, man, just
Yeah,
unbelievable, the players that were coming out of that league.
yeah. It was. It was a very good team in a very good league, and I mean, we could talk Pac West if you want to. I have a lot of opinions about it.
We only have so much time here
Yeah,
tonight.
fair enough.
Careful to our listeners. Anyway, okay, so 2 years wraps up at Douglas, and then what? The basketball playing side of it ends, and is it time to move on with school? Are there other distractions? What's happening there?
Well, there was a year, I think, a year in between graduating high school and playing,
Oh,
and so that year the teachers went on strike, on
oh
job
wow.
action, and so
Oh,
there was
okay.
no sports, and so I was a huge. Sorry, I wasn't very big into track and field, but my track and field coach had a huge impact on me, and I only ran it for 1 year in grade 12, and the guy just had such a big impact on my life, and so I was visiting his classroom, and it might have been end of October, and the basketball coach walked by and noticed me and said hi, and I said, "Well, how's the team looking?" And he said, "Well, there's not going to be a team, there's job action." And when he walked away, my track coach said, "I don't know anything about basketball. If you coach it, I'll sponsor it." It took a lot of heat doing it, but we ran it, and it was a year where every team did end up running, and so it wasn't like 2001, I believe, which saw some things, but it was a year where kind of everybody ran a team, and so yeah, that was I coached the senior boys team like one year out of high school. It was
Mhm.
crazy. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Did you know what you were doing? Were
I
you
had
just
no idea. I had no idea. All I knew was that I wanted them to play hard, and I knew that I wanted them to play fast, and I knew that they had to work on their skills, and that was it. And
yeah,
so, we had as basic an offense as you can have, which I think is not a bad thing.
yeah.
But
Nothing's changed.
right, but the ability to and we will talk about that. Nothing has really changed in that sense, but the ability to make adjustments
Yeah, of
was just not there. The knowledge wasn't there,
course.
but we did okay. We did
Mhm.
okay, and it was a really fun year.
Yeah, and so, being that young and coaching high school kids, like, what are you falling back on? What are the life lessons that you've learned as a family? Obviously, an immigrant family, and like,
hmm
there's got to be some sort of lessons in your household that, without you even knowing, maybe intrinsically, like, just what's coming out of you as a young coach that maybe you are happy about, and maybe reflect on maybe you would have changed. Like, how does that work? Because you're so young at that time.
Yeah, I think there's a story that kind of reflects my growth. I remember we were a couple guys couldn't make a Friday afternoon practice, and here I am still trying to play. So I'll step in at any point, and we said we said defense calls fouls. So if you go to
Okay.
the hoop, yeah, if you go to the hoop and you get fouled, you don't get to call it. The guy who fouls you gets to call it. So,
Mhm.
I got hacked a couple times by a player, and he didn't call it, and so I started lipping off and kind of change the total vibe of the practice when your coach, who's clearly immature because he's only a year older than you, is now
Yeah.
talking trash to a player and like going at
Right.
him.
Right.
And I remember going back to Soames' classroom. Soames was the track and field coach, and I just looked at him. I said, "I'm really sorry, and next practice I'm gonna run as many sets of lines as these guys want me to run because I can't behave like that." And he just looked at me and he said, "That's leadership, and if that kid has any ounce of maturity in him, he'll run with you. But we're not going to
Right.
make him. We'll see what he does." And so he didn't run with me, but I
Yeah.
ran the sets, and the kids were happy, and you
Yeah.
get him back. I think also I had a little bit of clout with those guys. They saw me
Right.
play in high school,
Yeah.
and, and that kind of carried some weight for me. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't carry weight anymore. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, Corbs is laughing. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, and then like you go through that, and then you're coaching the girls at Killarney. Like, what's the difference? And I've never coached a girls team in my life,
Okay,
and this is not a male only podcast, by the way.
sure.
We've got a list of female ballers we plan on getting on here. What's the difference? Do you approach things differently? Like, I know my high school coach, Rich Chambers, towards the end of his career, just jumped over and started coaching like women's basketball. Is there something different there? Have you learned more? What's happening?
You know what's interesting is so Soames had left David Thompson to go to Killarney, and so I
Okay.
followed him. And
All
of
right.
course, legendary coach Tom Tagami has the boys program on lock, and the girls coach had just retired, so we kind of stepped into that together,
Okay.
and a friend of mine as well, Andrew. So the three of us coach that senior team, and it's very different. I mean, and first of all, I think girls tend to rely on the fundamentals a little bit more. They're more willing to be coached when it comes to the skill stuff.
Hmm.
Even when it's simple, right? Because the guys, I think they see the flashy stuff, especially in the age of social media,
Yeah.
and so there was that difference, but the biggest difference for me, and maybe it's an oversimplification because I only spent 3 years doing it, but what I experienced was boys tend to have more of an ego, and you'll sometimes get a player who's like, let me win this game on my own, whereas girls tend to group up. And so the first year we did it, I remember there was like 3 girls in one friend group and 4 girls in another friend group,
I was
and
going
the
to say
two
good or
and
bad, you group up, right?
yeah, and they just wouldn't pass to each other. Like it was crazy. Like
Mm.
I don't know if they hated each other or whatever, but then we started to try to do some team building stuff and break that down. And it worked. I don't think the hatred ran deep, or maybe they just didn't know each other or whatever. But yeah, those were kind of the two biggest differences I could point out.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that, just
Mhm.
knowing how they, the genders kind of both operate, but interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And then fast forward in your case, so you're at Burn Creek, like, let's not worry about the junior. Let's just jump into, you're all of a sudden senior ball coach. And, obviously Wayne Best was there for a lot of years, did a great job and
hmm
got kind of that program on the map. Was he the first senior coach at the school?
He was, because
When you started?
the
Yeah.
school's so young. So he
When
was
did it open?
I believe 2006.
Okay, yeah. So
hmm
it's super young, right?
Yeah.
And he was there and had a lot of great teams going through Agrodome and just different things. And then you jump in and you're the senior coach. And I'm just gonna ask flat off, like, knowing you and who you are, like, does Burn Creek basketball sometimes get an unfair rap? And I know you don't care
Yeah.
because I know who you are,
Yeah.
but do they get an unfair rap?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, tell me more. Like, why? Hmm. You want me to tell my perspective?
Yeah. Why don't you tell me your
Yeah,
perspective?
but I
Yeah.
think I think at times, you continue to come to our tournament. You're always welcome in our door. We know that there's a whole bunch of things that come, with your school and your community. But I think what I've realized over the years is, like, your heart is in the right place and your intentions are in the right place. And let's be honest, we're in BC. If your teams are in even some parts of Calgary, some parts of Edmonton, if
hmm
they're in Toronto, if
hmm
they're in Quebec, they're just the norm, quote unquote. You know what I mean?
hmm
In terms of ethnicity. And
hmm
I think, you have an active, lively group of kids, but I think what I've come to realize when I came and visited you this year at your work and I saw what you do and I've seen the Burn Creek community, our school is connected and reached out and we've connected a lot more and done a lot of projects together, right? And not
hmm
even things that you've been doing or I've been doing, but cool things in terms of sharing our experiences from a Catholic private school to, like, your community school, right? And just sharing each other's stories. I think a lot of people don't really understand what each kid in your building is going through on a daily basis. And I think the thing that I respect about you the most is you and Sean Hake are willing, and your other coaches in your program and all the coaches there are willing to put their neck out for a bunch of kids who need you,
hmm
right?
hmm
And so I do think you get a bad rap. I do.
Yeah.
So there's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, in many ways you nailed it. I think we look different. Sometimes we express joy differently, and people aren't used to seeing things like that.
Yeah,
In terms of, our manager
quote.
dancing before the game and things
Yeah.
like this. And I think it can rub people the wrong way, right? Once you get to know that kid, you're like, this kid's incredible.
Mhm.
So there's that. I think, growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, there's some parallels, and so I've been able to offer. I hope I've been able to offer some empathy, but I also think, you're an educator, Corbin. You're a young coach, which is, you're an educator in that respect. And isn't it interesting when you work with young people? Sometimes you reflect on how much you need them.
For sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely an element of that for me too, right? Like, I think I feed off the Burn Creek community. I think those kids do make me better. I
Right.
hope I have a positive impact on their life, right? Like, and that's it. And I think, yeah, I do think we get a bad rap, and I think we're slowly taking that rap down. I hope so. And I don't think it's just the success we've had on the basketball court. I think it's the growth people have seen in some of our players,
Hmm.
and I hope that stuff has an impact. And the other side of it is, we've, since Wayne was there, we've always pulled up young players who were good enough to play. And so you add an element of immaturity, and that's just teenager stuff. That's not got anything to do
Sure.
with ethnicity or anything like that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
hmm
And so, tell me about, if you're okay with it, like, tell everybody, just what do you do for a job? Like, you're an educator, but your job is so much more in terms of what you're doing. I think people just assume that you work at Burn Creek and you, like, sit in a classroom, and that's not the case
Right.
at all. And I think it says a lot about your story and who you are. And I don't think people know that. So if you don't mind, I'd appreciate it if you shared that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I did teach classroom teaching at Byrne for a year. I also taught at another school for a year, and then
And
I
then,
kind of
and then you
fell
got
in.
like, oh, or and
No,
then
no, no. I kind of fell into this role of I fell into this role of community school coordinator, which we're the only community school that's a high school in Burnaby. The other community schools are elementary schools, and it's kind of this unique unique position. Other districts have community coordinators, but Burnaby is the only district where the coordinator has to be a teacher. So the model is a little bit different, and essentially what I do is, in a nutshell, is respond to community need and use community strengths to aid the curriculum. If I could put it in a nutshell, that would be
you're totally undervaluing what you do.
it.
And this is the uncomfortable part, right? This is
Yeah,
the part where you're supposed to, and you're not bragging. You're not.
right.
It's who you are. It's the job that you have. But I don't think I didn't know what you did until I showed up at your school, and that stuck with me for a good week and a half, and it's
Oh,
still.
okay.
So that's kind of the part of this podcast is for you to like, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's my story. Because I think when you walk into a gym and someone who's maybe listened to this podcast has never had a conversation with you
Right.
can look at you and go, I kind of know what this guy's been through today already before he even has to coach a game. But,
Sure.
he's already a married man, he's already got other things to deal with. But his job is 9 to 5, quote unquote. Like, you're not giving what you're doing for your community enough credit towards you. So if you're not going to say it, I will. So this is your last chance.
um, yeah, I
What are,
think
what are some of the major initiatives that you're doing at Burn Creek? What are
okay.
what are your really focuses?
Yeah, okay. I can share a little bit about that. So a big focus is on running the community room, which is basically a room that's more like a youth lounge than it is a classroom, where youth will come, or the students will come at break, at lunch, after school, before school, anytime there's not class, and just kind of hang out, get a snack, get some school supplies, whatever. Is just kind of a wraparound support. So that's a big part of the job already, and then helping run some after school programs and things like that. Like, I can give you an example. We were going to run a program this spring, which was a build a bike program, and so my job would be to coordinate that piece, coordinate the funding for it if it's required, and then put the pieces in place and recruit the kids to go do that. And so obviously we're not doing that with the current situation, but those are kind of some of the things that I do.
Yeah, and I think that the day that I came over, one of the things that I love about our school is it is a community and it's a comfortable place and we interact a little like we're family, right? And when I saw the kids coming through the door into your room or that room, I'm sure you don't call it your room, but whatever, just you could just sense that they felt a part of it. And it was just so cool to see them come and go and hang out and say
Hmm.
hi and then leave or talk to their friends and be on their way. So
Hmm.
just very eye opening. And I think a lot of people aren't really aware of what a school like Burn Creek and a lot of schools in the lower mainland across the country are actually doing to help kids that need it, right? That need
Right.
that support and that guidance. That have families, single moms that are working night shifts, that are working two jobs, that may
Yeah.
not have a meal in the morning, that have different backgrounds from what they're bringing, as immigrants and what they've gone through, right? The stuff
Hmm.
that they've seen, and someone like you and what you've been able to take from your experience, I think is so huge, and what you've been able to translate into your work life speaks more than anything about your basketball coaching, which is phenomenal. But that part of it, our jobs, that's who we are, especially as educators. Like, that gives us a huge identity. Coaching does too, but seeing what you do, it must just be such a huge part of your life and make you feel like you're just doing something that matters,
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. I think it definitely gives me a sense of purpose. I think very, very fortunate, privileged to be in the position. I think you want to do a good job wherever you go. I think I am a
Mhm.
purpose driven person. I can be really, really lazy when when I don't feel a sense of purpose. So it's nice for me to have that. I think it's an interesting place too, right? Like, I think there's over 90 languages spoken at the school, and so we thought we were diverse in East Van. We weren't diverse. this is diversity, and
Yeah.
ethnic diversity,
Yeah.
and and what's really cool about it is that when you're there on a day-to-day basis, you actually don't see diversity. You see kids bonding over things like basketball and hip hop and now rugby.
Yeah.
And so it's
Shout out
not
rugby
really,
program.
yeah, shout out rugby. I mean,
Yeah.
and we were going to run a girls program again. The spring season got canceled, but
Yeah, we
um,
combined with you. We had a few of our girls over there.
that's right. Yeah.
I'll check
So
with you. Yeah.
yeah. So so that's been great, and or wrestling, which STM helped out with on that, and so that's the cool part. I think
Yeah.
is that you see the world under one roof, and yet
Mhm.
everybody's connecting over the things they value and share and
Yeah.
love. Yeah.
Mhm. Cool, man.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Thanks for that insight. So now, being established, being someone who's been at Burn Creek for a long time, and what are some of the successes for you, as a coach and for your program, and what are the things that your journey has got you, like what do you feel like as a coach that you've learned along the way to now?
Hmm.
Because we all as younger coaches wish we could do things different, but I think that's part of it, right? Is like we're not perfect from the get-go and we still aren't, right? We're
Right.
growth mindset. So
Right.
now Burn Creek 2019, 2020, what are some of the things when you do take a time to pause and reflect, like what are your proudest achievements, as a coach, as a program,
Hmm.
and what's the future look like for you guys?
Well, without sounding corny, I think the proudest achievement is the relationships I have with the players and former players. You almost on a daily basis, I have a former player call me, whether it's just to say hi or check in or see if they can do something for Burn Creek or whatever, which I think is the true value of what we do, is creating those relationships and the space in which these young guys can create those relationships, and then remember that from a basketball standpoint, obviously. We had 2 or 3 years there. We did some damage. We won a couple lower mainlands. We had a couple Final Fours and a provincial final. Obviously that's a great experience for the kids, but also for me as a young-ish coach. I'll say that. How about that?
Settle
Uh,
down.
yeah, younger than Mitch, coach. How about that? And yeah, and so that stands up there. But the really nice part is seeing kids playing ball after they graduate, whether they're playing at a school or not. But they had a good enough experience at high school that they loved it,
For
and
sure.
they're continuing to play, right. And so that's what you really want to see.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool, man. That's honestly such good stuff, and that's why I wanted to have you on here. And for me as a coach as well, I had the opportunity to go on the Dynamite Basketball live Instagram with Broden Teal, and
That's right.
he asked me like which championship, and I just like I have a group chat with Corbin and his whole grad class from 2012. Like I am
Hmm.
on that WhatsApp group.
Mateo's in there as well.
Mateo,
Oh,
oh, you
Mateo.
met Mateo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's the guy that can beat you one on
Very
one. Or
sure.
is that the guy we're talking about?
The what?
The guy that beats you one on one all the time?
Oh boy.
Is he talking to Corbin? Are you talking
No,
to
I'm talking
Corbin?
to you. I'm talking to you, Mitch.
Oh, anyways.
Yeah, I met him. He's a student teacher at Burn Creek, actually. Small world.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And those guys are in a group chat and just going to our alumni tournament and reconnecting with the kids, and like that's kind of really what it's all about, and that's I think why you and I have been able to gravitate towards each other because we have, although we're in like really polar opposite worlds educationally,
hmm,
right? I think we're both grounded in the same beliefs and values, and it's kind of funny that our paths have gone each different way, but we've found a way to like somehow connect that way. So that's kind of cool stuff. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey. Is there anything else you feel like you want to add? Is there something we're missing? Is there something about basketball that you feel we haven't talked about yet, or can we move on to the rapid fire round?
we can move on to the rapid fire. I do want to touch on something you just said, is that we have these paths that we walk, and the paths that may not have crossed each other have crossed each other because of sport and because of basketball. It's incredible what it can do. If it's okay, I can share a story about that too.
Absolutely, fire.
Yeah,
Go for
yeah,
it.
I was teaching English in India, in the Himalayas, to Tibetan refugees, and I was just going for a walk, and I noticed a basketball court on the side of the Himalayas, and you can imagine it's incredible. And these guys were playing ball, and I got myself in there, and and just trying to work the ball, pass it around, whatever. But when they think you're just going to pass, and then they leave you open, and you hit a shot, and then you hit another shot, and then next thing you know, you start feeling good, and then your team is winning game after game after game. And these guys, had a decent understanding of basketball, but really didn't know too much. And they started to foul me pretty hard. They started chopping me in the throat, poking me in the eye, 2-hand pushes in the back. And you're with these Tibetan refugees, you don't know anybody, so I'm not going to really say anything. And then at the end of it, the most violent guys on the court kind of went over to one corner of the court together and started taking off their clothes and putting on monks' robes. And the Tibetan community is predominantly Buddhist, and Buddhists are nonviolent generally. And so I went over there and I said, "You guys are monks?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "At Nechung Monastery," which was kind of the monastery right there. And they said, "You know that monastery?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Don't tell anybody we were playing basketball because we're not allowed." And one of those guys is still a guy I'm in touch with, like a lifelong friend, right? Like it's crazy what sport can do to create those bonds and relationships. Yeah,
that's cool. Were you able to fight through the contact and finish a couple, or you already told us
just a couple, yeah, just a couple.
Awesome, man. Corbs, did you have any questions or any comments? I mean, obviously, you're a young coach, up and coming, working on your education degree, and anything to add or question? I know it's probably not going to be anything, but before we move on.
Appreciate the confidence in me, Mitch. I guess, what was the transition for you? Was there a certain when you started out becoming a coach? What was the difference when you were like, okay, I'm 19, 20 years old versus I am the adult in the room. These kids are actually looking to me for some guidance and for some as a role model, right? Like, what was that change for you?
Well, I think two things. One was playing some college basketball, and then making the decision to not play anymore and letting that go was big for me. And then the other was, earning a degree in education, which kind of puts you in that you're officially a teacher, and so a certain level of professionalism is expected. So that helped the transition. But the quitting of playing and accepting or embracing coaching as something I wanted to do probably, allowed me to take it more seriously.
Awesome. I appreciate that answer. Thank you so much.
That's a good answer. I think, and this is kind of what I'm jealous of, Val, is like just these platforms did not exist when we were younger, right? And
not at all.
It's good or bad, and it's just different, but it's just like there's so many resources for young people to continue a growth mindset and to tap into so many different things, and it doesn't have to do with coaching. It's whatever they want, and just it's phenomenal, man.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So go a little rapid fire. Thank you for your time tonight, but we're going to keep you for a few more minutes. Who's your favorite player growing up?
MJ, and then shortly after that, Iverson. Iverson was a small guard and could just fill it up and had tons of attitude, and I just loved the way he played ball. I just loved it.
I want that gray Hoyas jersey, man.
Man, when he was at the Hoyas, he was nice. Yeah,
I had the blue Hoyas starter jacket.
Oh, the pullover?
No, just the button up.
Oh yeah. Those were clean. Those were clean. Yeah.
I was worried that I was going to get jumped for it.
That was the golden era of sports fashion. Corbin doesn't know nothing about that.
Yeah.
No, way too young.
Yeah. It's all coming back again. Okay, so then obviously you're going to be biased, but in your opinion, like, who's the greatest basketball player of all time?
MJ.
Okay. You've tagged me in a few lists, but like, who are you listening to right now? Doesn't matter if it's hip hop, doesn't have to be.
Okay.
If it is hip hop, you're a big hip hop guy. Like, who are some of your most favorite influential MCs, artists?
Okay. Right now, today, I was listening to Charles Bradley, kind of a soul blues kind of singer. But hip hop wise, Black Thought from the Roots is big for me, and Biggie. Those are probably my top two. I like the East Coast. I like the East Coast sound.
East Side, East Coast goes together.
There you go.
Phenomenal MC, that guy. I feel like he could freestyle forever. Have you seen his beard recently?
No, I haven't seen it recently.
I feel like he has a COVID beard going. It is long, man. And for people out there, if you get the chance to see the Roots live, you don't even need to be a hip hop fan. If it's live music, there's 10 instruments. It is one of the most phenomenal performances you'll see. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you a big fan of him?
Black Thought?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like the Roots aren't necessarily someone that I'm huge on. I love
Right.
a lot of what they do, but I'm loving the separation and getting to appreciate Black Thought more, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been a nice transition to just kind of, but if someone like Jimmy Fallon's going to pick you and your band and your hip
Sure.
hop group, be like, you're kind of dope. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah. I'm not sure, as a young-ish Indian man, thoughts on ketchup on macaroni.
I love ketchup. Never put it on macaroni.
My man.
Yeah.
My man.
Whether
That's a good
and
answer.
whether it was Kraft or home cooked, it didn't matter. You don't put that on there.
Straight disrespectful, right?
Straight disrespect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You walk into a corner store, you got one bag of chips you can grab. They are
Lay's barbecue.
Let's
Corb's?
go.
Is that Corbin's pick?
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was my pick.
Yeah.
Corbin literally said there's one chip in his house and that's it. Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
Best chip in the
It
world.
really is. You can't go wrong.
Cannot go wrong. I have so much more respect for you now, Bal.
I mean,
I appreciate that.
yeah, we won't talk about what the respect level was before, but anyway, three more for you.
Okay.
The most important person in your life has been.
My grandfather.
You want
Yeah, I can elaborate. Yeah, sorry. He was captain in the Indian Army, had 3 master's degrees, spoke 6 languages, opened a college for women in India, kind of a staunch feminist. He was in his 20s when India became independent, and a lot of the intellectuals from that time embraced this idea of nation building, and for him, women's education was very important to that project. So he moved here in 96, 97 when I was in grade 8 and lived here for 10 years before he passed, and had a huge impact on me.
So can you give us a real reason why you like him?
Yeah.
Just mildly accomplished.
Yeah, just mildly. Yeah.
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 Who's the greatest player you've either played or coached against?
That's a good question.
No disrespect to anybody else, just someone that comes on the top of your head that maybe torched you or that whatever.
I played against Navi Sekon, and he was very, very difficult to guard. And the next guy after that would be Lewis Johnson.
Oh wow!
Mm-hmm.
Both Langara had the opportunity to play with Lou at Langara.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I got to play against them in men's leagues and stuff like that, but they still had it. And Navi played with a little bit of a mean streak, and I like that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Navi was always pissed that he felt like someone was overlooking him.
Right.
And he could just fill it. He could fill it. He was a serious hooper.
Yeah.
Cool. And then last questions of the night is if you could do it all over again, you would.
Ooh.
Dom needed a second for this one again. I'll repeat it. If you could do it all over again, you would.
I'd get serious about school a little earlier in my life and try to graduate a little sooner than I did.
Talking to a couple guys who've definitely taken the long path as well.
Yeah.
I managed to extend my 5-year degree into 7, and Forbes is a high school grad of 2012 and still sorting it out. So
yeah.
I'm a year behind Mateo at this point. So.
Yeah.
I love that answer. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong or whatever, but I just don't you feel part of it was like maybe you just didn't know, but you just weren't ready yet,
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think it's part of your path. Like it makes you who you are too. So I would do it without trading the experiences I had not doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Totally. Man, so thankful you could join us. So happy that you were one of the first, guests that we could have. Totally value and respect you, not only for who you are as a person, but what you do for your job and the people that you work with and your ability to just help them have a great experience through high school sport. I think that's so important, and I think it's important for our listeners to know that a Hoops Journey podcast is not just about people that played university or went on and made it pro or did this and that. I think hoops has a definition for many different people. And I think you are a prime example of that. And we're super grateful to have you on. And we wish you nothing but the best going forward. Go Bulldogs, and dogs got to eat. And
Yeah.
we love and appreciate you. And I, from a personal level, appreciate your friendship and wish you nothing but the best, my man.
Well, and that's a mutual feeling. I think, I look at you as a competitor, but as a good friend of mine, and you've been a mentor to me in this coaching game, and really appreciate all that you've done for me, and also having me on here. And Corbin, seeing the energy you're putting in, a young guy who wants to continue coaching is very inspirational. It invigorates me. So I appreciate both you guys, and thank you so much for having me on.
Appreciate it, Paul. Thank you so much.
You got it, man. Much love.